everyone. Welcome to the Glow podcast. I'm here with a very exciting guest today, Gina, and I'm super excited to talk to her. If you're new here, we are Tailored Marketing, and we help skincare and aesthetic clinics grow their practices and increase their revenue. So if you are interested in learning more, drop a comment below. Gina, I'm so excited to have you here today. I would love for you to just kind of go ahead and introduce yourself so my guests know who you are.
Amazing. Super excited to be here. I really appreciate it. So my name's Gina Graziano. I have been an expert in the field of aesthetics for about 16 years. I've sold a lot of different aesthetic companies. I also worked for a magazine called New Beauty, running part of their advertorial and working with their best-in-class doctors across the Northeast. So I've always been in doctor land, always been, on the aesthetic side. Recently started my own consultancy about 2 years ago called the MedSpa Matchmaker, where I help med spas become more profitable.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you have such a long history too in the aesthetics industry. So I'm sure with your clients, you're able to offer just a wealth of knowledge, really being in the industry for so long. And so what inspired you to kind of move into consulting for med spas? Did you see a huge need in the market for this, or what kind of led you to that decision?
Well, I started in aesthetics with a really strong background in sales, right? So I've been repping these major brands, learning the intricacies of devices, injectables, and skincare by really just kind of being in the trenches with providers every day. And over time, I kind of realized that something was missing. Med spa owners were buying these really expensive pieces of technology and hiring staff without really the strategy to back it up. So when I left the last company I was at, the laser company, I started getting contacted by my old clients saying, you were so great helping us learn how to sell Morpheus in the practice. Can you come in and teach my team how to sell our new laser hair removal, what have you. So it just kind of started as like onesie, twosie projects I did on the side.
Yeah.
But then I really started seeing these incredible businesses like underperforming, not because the providers weren't talented, but really because nobody was guiding them on how to build a really profitable and scalable operation. So that's really when I stepped into consulting. And now I help med spas across the country make just like smarter decisions, I would say, when they're bringing in equipment, really advising them on staffing, helping design service menus, helping maximize their profitability.
Yeah.
And so I'm not just a sales rep any longer, which is helpful. I really just try to ask the hard questions, dig into the numbers, and really make sure the ROI is real.
Yeah.
I have over 35 practices under my umbrella. What drives me most is just helping providers focus less on hype and getting swindled by salespeople, but really building something that makes sense that can last in the practice.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And what do you see with maybe a newer med spa, or even a more, I guess we'll start with a newer one. What do you see them struggling with maybe the most? Where you're okay, this is an issue that almost everyone I'm working with is kind of facing.
So I would say whether people have been established or are brand new, the last couple of years have been pretty tough. The number of new med spas in the United States has doubled from 2018 to now. We had banner years in 2020 and 2021. And that growth, I think everyone kind of thought was going to sustain them into the foreseeable future. But what's happening is there's double the amount of options for patients. And so without a differentiator, if we're just offering the standard stuff, Botox, some hair removal, standard things, there's really no reason someone would go to a newer spa unless it's price driven. So we kind of see this phenomenon where people are racing to the bottom with their core services. And so I try to provide the most value I can by getting people to include other services that are differentiators and make packages and promotions and memberships that lock patients into their practice.
Yeah. No, I think you're so right too. Sometimes it can just be a race to the bottom, with really anything, because if you feel like you're getting the same service wherever you go, then you're going to choose logically the one that's the least expensive. But if you can really find a way to differentiate yourself in kind of an oversaturated market, then that gives you kind of a leg up where maybe you can charge a little bit more if that makes sense for you. So I think that that's great. And so what about with say a more established practice? Are they facing kind of the same things, or do you see them facing different issues?
So definitely The larger practices have more buying power, right? So when you
Yeah.
buy more quantity of things like Botox and filler, your pricing goes down. So the bigger chains have a easier time kind of undercutting and underpricing the newer spas. I would say probably the biggest operational challenge from these bigger chains is staffing. It's hiring and retention.
Yeah.
The aesthetic workforce is incredibly transient, and with injectables specifically, those injectors have a following that will move with them where they go. And I always talk about this. I am fortunate to have access to some really amazing injectors, right? I have probably 700 clients in New York and New Jersey that I've worked with as a rep over the years. I still drive an hour and a half to go to my injector because I just trust her with my face and thus, my life. So a lot of the power is in those injectors, and a lot of them are going out on their own. You have a client base after a while, and you can build your own business. And when that injector moves, it not only disrupts, having somebody that's really well trained and articulate and knows your systems. Like hiring someone is always an interruption, but you can actually see a huge portion of your business follow that person elsewhere.
Yeah.
So that, and I would say a kind of a lack of systems. Spas often scale really quickly on the front end, adding services, devices, team members, but they don't like to slow down and implement like the less sexy stuff. Operating procedures, sales protocols, treatment algorithms. It's kind of like you're building a plane while you're trying to fly it. So, and then I would say third, like pricing and profitability in general is a challenge right now. Too many spas are kind of guessing on their pricing or just trying to compete with these bigger chain models, which is again a race to the bottom. So I really try to get people to understand their cost per treatment and rework their menus to be able to drive more higher margin services to keep people coming back.
Yeah, no, that makes sense for sure. And so when you're going in and looking at, say, a med spa and you're kind of diagnosing the problem, how do you kind of go about doing that when you're talking with an owner? Like, what questions are you asking and those types of things?
Yeah, I really need to understand what's going on. So I do an initial consultation with leadership, and then I tend to meet with all of the providers and staff within the practice. Typically, I can understand what's going on or where the disconnect or bottleneck is just by doing staff interviews. But I find a lot of people don't quite know their numbers. They don't quite know their break-even point. They don't quite know where they're at profitability wise for treatment. So I do a lot of back end deep diving, making sure that everything is accounted for and we know our true profitability. I make sure that's in line with industry standard, as well as taking a look at their product mix. So what's actually being sold in the practice, what's the average ticket, and just trying to see if we're missing the mark anywhere there, right? 50-60% of our business should be from toxin. Are we there? Profitability should 25 to 35%. Are we there? So I really try to make data informed decisions, but also have that human element to understand where we can tighten up with processes and support.
Yeah, for sure. No, that makes sense. Kind of switching to a little bit of a different topic now. Obviously, the aesthetic industry, as well as just the medical industry in general, is constantly changing. There has been regenerative medicine is getting a lot more attention. So kind of with that, what innovations are you most excited for? What are your clients most excited for?
So personally, and I help to run a sales team that is in this space. So I do a lot of different types of consulting. One of those is sales consulting for aesthetic companies. So I'm really deeply excited about polynucleotides, PDRN. It's the salmon sperm DNA that we're seeing from Korea, and things like exosomes and peptides. We're really seeing a move more towards just like from marketing buzz to like true aesthetic outcomes. These products are really bridging the gap between aesthetics and healing and true repair, longevity. They're not just skin deep, they're working on like inflammation, microcirculation, tissue regeneration at the cellular level. So, and peptide delivery, whether it's NAD or BPC 157 for wound healing, the idea that we can kind of prime the skin and the body for better results by tapping into these regenerative compounds, that's really where aesthetics is headed, especially when it's paired with energy-based devices for like synergistic effects. So I definitely think this longevity, wellness, whole health wave is a really fun way that people can differentiate, and it's where the future of aesthetics is headed.
Yeah, and I know you told me a little bit more about the salmon sperm and kind of what all of that entails, but for the audience, can you kind of explain that a little bit more? How did this come about? What are the benefits?
Absolutely. This product is This particular product that I am representing is called Rejurin. It's from South Korea. We know Koreans are like 5 or 10 years ahead of us in terms of product innovation and patient philosophy. They really focus on prevention and skin health first, not just like artificially propping up our skin with things like filler. And the US med spas are now catching on. Like we're seeing this little K-beauty wave come through. We make regenerative products out of all sorts of things. Polylactic acid, some are human derived, some are animal derived, some are plant derived. The PDRN salmon sperm DNA is really a regenerative DNA double helix that's taken from salmon sperm and testes. And when it's introduced into the skin, it triggers this cascade of healing. So we have inflammation control, we have microcirculation and blood flow and lymphatics. We stimulate collagen and elastin. It helps prevent UV-induced stress, so it prevents pigmentation, rosacea flare-ups. It's really about like healing DNA repair kit, teaching cells how to behave younger, become younger. And I think it goes hand in hand with all the regenerative medicine, that's going on in the field now.
For sure. No, it definitely does. I feel like the benefits are amazing, honestly, for it. But it is kind of funny to think about, like, how did somebody discover this?
For sure. We put crazy things on our face in aesthetics. There's one skincare brand that actually uses human foreskin in their aesthetics.
Wow.
We're doing this stuff. It's kind of weird when you think about it, but honestly, the science is there. So, you have to listen to it regardless of what it actually is.
Yeah, I mean, I would feel more comfortable using the salmon sperm than human foreskin for sure.
Same.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. And so we're also kind of seeing a shift towards more holistic aesthetics as well, treating obviously the external and how you look makes you feel good. If you feel good, you look good kind of phenomenon. People are becoming more kind of aware of the internal things that are also affecting the external. And so how are you kind of seeing this shape treatments as well within the aesthetic industry and within the med spas?
Yeah, I think we're living longer. We want to look younger longer. We see all these celebrities that are in their 60s and they look like they're in their 30s or 40s, right? So part of that is not just doing lasers. It's really taking care of yourself. These people work out like crazy. They're getting longevity treatments like NAD and IV drips. And so spas are finally realizing that like glowing skin and external beauty really starts in the gut, in the hormones, and in the mitochondria. And that's why we're seeing these spas like integrate hormone balancing and IV therapy and advanced diagnostics like GI mapping and DNA testing. So it's the rise of functional aesthetic medicine. That's kind of what me and some of my colleagues are calling it. So the shift is also changing how we sell and how patients look at treatments. They're not just looking at a Band-Aid. They don't just want to take a medication to control a symptom. They really want these like long-term inside-out solutions. We can pair our traditional aesthetic devices with things like exosomes and polynucleotides and skincare that's holistic and regenerative. And people start understanding like internal triggers like cortisol and inflammation are shown on our exterior, right? We can't hide what's going on inside. So we can do everything we want externally, but if the inside's not balanced, it's not going to last. So it's almost like people are just getting a little more serious about long-term health, wellness, and overall, appearance and health.
For sure. Yeah, and I feel like we have so much more access to so much more information now. So people are starting to learn about these things too, because even like 10 years ago, 10 years ago was 2015, like the rise of social media was kind of just starting like a few years prior to that. But now it's just so easy to like go to Dr. Google or Dr. TikTok, and like kind of see like, okay, what is out there for this, and I feel like people have so much more access to information.
100%.
Yeah. And how do you kind of see, because obviously social media has been around now for like, 10, 15 years or so. How do you see that kind of affecting the med spa industry with maybe like some unrealistic standards, but also people are hearing about treatments more often and things like that. So how do you see it kind of affecting for your clients?
Yeah, so we're in this age where we have an almost like an overeducated consumer.
Yeah.
It just depends on what's being pushed to me on my Instagram, right? But
Yeah.
I'm going to take Morpheus for an example. I used to sell that technology. Morpheus as a brand, it was an incredible success story because of social media and influencer endorsements. And so patients start asking for that treatment by name. As a practice, you can take one of two stances, right? You can get the technology that everybody's asking about and make it easy. Or you can get that same general concept, so another, say, RF microneedling device, but then every time someone comes in and wants the brand name, we have to spend time educating on why the brand name isn't our choice, try to get them to convert. So easiest pathway and least resistance is bring in what people are asking for. So
Yeah.
patients really kind of dictate now what a lot of my spas are carrying. Like I've had people say, look, I don't want to buy a device right now, but we have so many people asking for it. Like every time they call in, we're just leaving money on the table. So, but a lot of where we get our news is social media. It's definitely a TikTok phenomenon, definitely an Instagram phenomenon. But for unrealistic expectations, I can't tell you how many times I'm scrolling and someone will post a before and after. And I know instantly just from selling these things that that's a filtered photo. And so it sets everyone up to be disappointed, right? The patient is going to expect this blow your hair back surgical result from a device, which we can't do.
Yeah.
They're not going to allow you to use their photos. They might leave a bad review. They might go after getting their money back. So it really doesn't benefit anybody to lie like that. But social media is just the Wild West. So, I would always recommend to a patient, ask for several examples of work. Don't just go off of one case. And always try to find the before photo that looks like you. A lot of, different ethnicities, skin types, different skin thicknesses, different skin issues all respond very differently. My little white ladies who are in their 60s have such thin skin that they see beautiful blow your hair back results in terms of dermal thickening, where my darker skin patients don't have those same things. Darker skin patients might not be candidates for certain treatments. So I always say try to find someone that looks like you and then get a few examples of you as that before to make sure that the outcomes are consistent, and that you're happy with 70% of it.
But that's really good advice, honestly, to look for someone that looks similar to you, because obviously we all have different skin types and you won't get the same exact results, but at least they're going to be comparable. Because if you're looking at somebody who has, if you have darker skin, they have lighter skin, or maybe they're 60 and you're 30, you're not going to have the same results. So I really think that that's really good advice, honestly, for kind of creating those realistic expectations with clients and patients. And so kind of so you obviously work with the Korean skincare line, and you believe in it very much. Right now, are we seeing med spa owners kind of bringing similar things to the US, or what is kind of that process for when we can look to see that in our market?
Sure. So the FDA is very finicky here in the United States. So there's all different classifications of product. Some people bring what they want abroad, and technically that is an illegal import. You can only really purchase in the United States things that are under at least FDA guidance and registered with an entity called MOCRA. And that basically allows products from other countries to be imported into the United States. So first, I would tell people always try to find these foreign brands that have a U.S. post, because I know they've done the work to register it, and if you have it in your office, it's not going to be an issue that the FDA is going to come after you for. So that's number one. Regulation and supply chain really matters, right? So number two is just because a product is hot overseas doesn't mean it's cleared here. Or it can be under a different clearance. So the product I sell right now is actually an injectable in 20 something countries, but in the US it's only a topical. So even though we have studies and it's safe, if you inject a patient and you put it on social media and your competitor sees that, they're going to report you and you could lose your license. So I do a lot of coaching about what is off-label, meaning it has FDA approval and it's just a new area that we're treating or what is truly not FDA approved yet. And it's really important that everybody understands that. And if they do want to move forward, they have proper consents. Patients really need to understand that it is not FDA approved. It's not just off label. And you have to be responsible for any contraindications or adverse events that, happen as a result of using these non-FDA approved products. That being said, FDA is there to regulate, to make sure things are safe. But if it's in 20-something other countries with 12 years of data and 2,000 published studies, a lot of people can kind of proceed with confidence. So,
Yeah.
Kind of taking a stab at like, what's hype? What's going to work here? And a lot of that is just clinical outcomes based. So I just encourage people to sample, really understand the product, make sure you do your training, and then have your back end consents and legal backup.
Yeah, no, that makes sense for sure. I mean, yeah, we can obviously, if it's approved in 20 different countries, like you said, you can do it that way you will, but it's like, it's obviously pretty safe. It's just the FDA obviously has some weird regulations that other places don't have. And yeah, so no, that makes sense. And so if you, for our listeners out there who are maybe thinking about starting a med spa or are in the process of kind of doing that, so with obviously all of your experience and you helping other med spa owners grow theirs or even start theirs, if you had to build a med spa from scratch today, what would be three things that you would really prioritize first?
That's a great question. I think if I'm starting a med spa from scratch, I just want to make sure that I am set up completely properly for the laws of my state. And they're ever changing. So I think initially a consultation with a med spa specific lawyer is really important. There are certain states where if you are a non-MD, you cannot legally own a med spa. And so I've seen people build med spas like a nurse and a doctor for 5 years together, split profits, everything. And at the end of the day, that nurse does not own a piece of that med spa legally. So really making sure, you're set up with the right LLC, S Corp, whatever makes the most sense in your state, that you legally can own the med spa, or you have an MSO or some sort of services arrangement or agreement where that is a legal way to own a part of your practice. Really want to make sure that your pre and post care information and all of your consent forms, membership forms, automatic billing forms, social media consent forms are very robust, and that they must be signed before you see a patient.
Yeah.
Making sure that the processes are there. There's an area for before and after photos. We have a system of checking in a patient, rooming them, taking pictures. The consultation process is the same. Perhaps we have a form that everybody follows, right? Just really setting up those standardizations from the jump is probably the first thing that I would do.
Yeah.
Second would be like personnel based. So you never want to practice on a patient, right? We have one shot to get that patient through the door and keep them. So I really take a look at who we're hiring, very rigorous interview process and a rigorous training process before they ever have their hands on a paying patient. I think a lot of people want to hire and like move, which I totally understand. But so much can go wrong with these procedures, especially injectables. And one little thing missed in the consultation process, one little sales end missing in our conversation, or somebody having a rough day and just like not knowing what they're supposed to know about the treatment. We really need training on all parts. Technically, they need to be proficient. And then from a sales perspective, they really have to be proficient.
Yeah.
We're seeing this big shift of hospital nurses and PAs coming into the aesthetics field. It's a way more fun field. Working in a hospital is very different. You sit back and you wait for patients to be assigned to you. There's no sales end.
Yeah.
And the way we talk about treatments, even in the hospital, and the risks associated, we have to put a little bow on that in aesthetics, right? Like we have to soften it. So that part, that consultation, which I call it the art of a consultation. I have a whole series about training on that. That's really like my number 2 where I would spend some time.
Yeah.
And then number 3 would be putting together a really robust marketing strategy. It is saturated. And if you're opening a new med spa, starting with 0 patients, we're not in the time in the aesthetics field where making $650 to $850K your first year is really achievable. So we have to like really, really put money behind marketing, make very interesting promos and memberships, grassroots it, in the neighborhood. Like there's a lot you have to do to launch. So third is launch strategy, marketing, and branding.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, I think that you touched on a lot of the really, really important pieces of kind of the legality standpoint, the consultation too. And then also, obviously, marketing is important for any aesthetics clinic. Like you said, it is kind of a saturated market. It used to be a little bit easier, but easier in kind of a different way. I guess easier with getting clients, but like the market was kind of untapped, so people didn't really know a lot of the things that we know now too. Yeah, so no, that totally makes sense. And also, what's kind of some of the biggest misconceptions in aesthetics that you see patients or even maybe like the med spa owners, like before they're starting a business, they have kind of this certain misconception about it?
I think the biggest misconception about aesthetics from a practice owner perspective is that you're going to walk in and just be making money hand over fist. And that used to be true. So I found people that maybe even opened their first med spa in 2020, 2021. Now they're opening their second and they're like, what's going on here? It was so turnkey the first time. It's really challenging to get butts in seats these days. I think that's probably the biggest misconception on the provider and business owner side.
Yeah.
I guess on the consumer side, this is an altruistic way to look at aesthetics, but when I first joined this field, candidly, I kind of thought I would be sitting around like watching The Real Housewives all day, like women with duck lips walking past me.
Yeah.
I was in my very early 20s. This is all so brand new. For me, the misconception that aesthetics is just about vanity is probably the biggest lie right now. The truth is that when people feel confident in their skin, they show up in the world in a completely different way.
Yeah.
And this field is so deeply emotional and so deeply healing. We're not just like treating people's faces, we're really helping people reconnect with themselves. I can't tell you how many times I've done events for my clients and I've had women walk up to me that had, women's health treatments and they're saying, I haven't been able to be intimate with my partner in 10 years and now I can again. And it's like saved their marriage. Or a woman that's, aging. We're in our 50s or early 60s and still in the workforce. And they said, I just kind of felt frumpy. I felt like I couldn't compete with these younger girls, and now I feel good about myself. That translates, So I just think it's an exciting time to see the longevity and health side of the aesthetics world come in, because I think that will just continue to grow, help people feel better, more confident, more energetic, more alive for longer.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And so for your business, this is the kind of the last question that I like to ask people. What are kind of your goals for the next year or 2 years? Where are you headed? And all that fun stuff.
I definitely want to continue to support my practices. I'm hoping that we'll have the ability to help more people down the line. My team is growing. I have 7 people on my team right now. Some that specialize in EMR and HR, a legal end, a creative end. So I'm excited to see like what other services I'm going to need to provide. We do kind of run the gamut right now, but definitely the hiring side of things is really taking off. So I think we'll see some more growth there. Personally, I've had the opportunity to be on many more podcasts and do more speaking engagements. So I'm really hoping to see that continue. I would say specialties are definitely in sales, and then just maximizing profitability of devices. It's something I'm super passionate about and I just love to dive into. So I'm hoping I'll see more of that and continue to learn about all of the new innovations and new devices and new topicals. I continue to go to a lot of trade shows that are outside of the United States. Those tend to be a better indicator of what's coming on next. So I was just able to go to Monaco a couple of months ago and learn about all the new peptides and other forms of salmon and fish stem cells and all sorts of crazy things coming. And I just think it's going to be a really fun few years. So looking forward to continued growth in that space.
That's awesome. And tell everybody where is the best place to find you, and I'll also drop it in the show notes too, so for easy access, but if you want to tell everyone as well.
Thank you. So you can head to my website, which is www.themedspamatchmaker.com. You can book a complimentary 30-minute consultation if you'd like to get some information and pricing. You can also follow me on Instagram at medspa_matchmaker.com. I do offer, one-on-one consultation, staff training, equipment matchmaking, full operational audits. So yeah, I'd love to help you do it smarter, not harder, if you're looking for some help.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. And like I said, I'll put everything in the show notes too, so it's easy for everyone to access. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really, really appreciate it. And we will see you next time.
Thanks, Taylor.